Trump losing his cool over Epstein. When asked about CNN's reporting that Vice President J.D. Vance was planning to hold a strategy session tonight on Jeffrey Epstein damage control, here's what the President of the United States said.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country. And that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit.
It's bullshit and it's a hoax. Those are the exact words that he just used there. Of course, the Jeffrey Epstein situation is not bullshit or a hoax, right? There are thousands of girls who were sexually assaulted and abused while underage. That's not BS or a hoax. And that's not partisan, right? You can say that as a Democrat, you say that as a Republican, and certainly as the MAGA base, which has not let up on this issue tonight. And it comes as J.D. Vance appears to be taking on a central role when it comes to the Epstein investigation. Sources are telling CNN tonight that Vance's role is to essentially act as a middle person, a middleman between the warring factions inside the Trump administration, because there are warring factions over what to do with the Epstein files. On one side now, the Attorney General Pam Bondi. She now says there's nothing more to release. On the other end, FBI Director Kash Patel, who had long wanted transparency on Epstein.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Vance, though, was once in lockstep with Patel, wanting all the files, wanting any lists or whatever euphemism, but lists to know who was involved, pounding the table for answers. Vance wanted them. In September of 2021, Vance wrote, quote, "Remember when we learned that our wealthiest and most powerful people were connected to a guy who ran a literal child sex trafficking ring? And then that guy died mysteriously in jail? And now we just don't talk about it." A few months later, Vance responded to a post claiming the DOJ and Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers made a deal that her so-called little black book would never be made public. To that, Vance responded, I quote again, "What possible interest would the U.S. government have in keeping Epstein's clients secret?" Oh. And here he is last year, speaking to right-wing podcaster Theo Von.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Well, it would be important. Now, though, Vance has very little to say publicly about Epstein. Occasionally has tossed some red meat at the MAGA base by blaming the media for Epstein reporting, specifically the Wall Street Journal when they had that birthday book. In fact, Vance's tune, other than being quiet, has changed so much when he has said something that Theo Von has called Vance out. Theo Von actually reposted a clip of that interview with Vance and added, quote, "Yeah, what changed?" And that is a question that many are asking, including Epstein's victims and their families, who obviously know that the Epstein allegations and underage child sex abuse is not hoax or bullshit. In fact, they are increasingly calling out Trump and the administration as they want transparency. Virginia Giuffre's family saying in a statement after Maxwell was suddenly moved to that cushy, lower security prison in a residential neighborhood right after she met with Trump's deputy attorney general, quote, "This move smacks of a cover-up. The victims deserve better." Well, the attorney for another victim, Annie Farmer, who says Epstein and Maxwell assaulted her in 1996, slammed the DOJ for lack of transparency, writing, "It smacks of a cover-up." And Alicia Arden, who claims Epstein assaulted her in 1997, telling NBC News, quote, "There's a cover-up of some kind going on." And of course, people talking about a cover-up because why not put out all the information when for years your team was out there saying this information should be there for everyone to see. Kristen Holmes is out front live outside the White House beginning our coverage this night. Kristen, Trump clearly angry that these questions are not going away about the Epstein case, to kind of lose his cool there and to swear in that room, members of his cabinet, CEO of Apple, all standing there, show a real level of frustration.
Yeah, Aaron, that's right, and it's not surprising because what we're hearing is that what we're seeing from Trump publicly is also what's going on behind the scenes, that he doesn't understand why this won't just go away. One of the things that President Trump is good at is essentially avoiding certain stories, letting things die out and moving on, and this just isn't going away now. Of course, as you've mentioned, some of his strongest supporters are the ones who are perpetuating this story, who continue to bring it up and ask for more transparency. But I will tell you that while President Trump wants to not talk about the Epstein files, he gets frustrated with these questions, there are those around him, particularly within the White House, who understand that the White House needs to take control of this narrative. They have been largely on the defense for several weeks now since that Department of Justice memo, and that's why, or at least part of why, it was important for J.D. Vance, the vice president, to have a sit down with the top people who are part of that response. It's not just the public response, but it's also making sure that all the team players are on the same team. I will remind you, the last time we talked about a sit-down meeting between Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, and the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the deputy director of the FBI stormed out of that meeting after he was alleged to have leaked information about Pam Bondi, and it was not even clear if Dan Bongino would come back to work after that. There are clearly warring factions here, and if they are going to take control of the narrative, they are going to take control of the optics, they have to be on the offensive and they have to be working together as a team. So this idea of them talking about strategy, it's not just how they're going to respond, it's making sure that everyone is on the exact same page as they do issue their response. And one of the things, of course, we've been reporting is this idea that they are debating and leaning towards releasing at least part of that transcript of the interview with the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. That, of course, is a big decision to make. They're going to want to make sure that all the key players who are going to be held responsible, that includes Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, are aware and on the same page as that information potentially comes out.
All right, Kristen, thank you so much. And Kristen, of course, with all that new reporting from the White House tonight, I want to go to James Marsh because he's a lawyer who has represented about a dozen Epstein accusers, including Maria Farmer, who we have spoken to here on this program. Also with me, Mimi Rocah, a prosecutor. She was a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York and Westchester County District Attorney, and Barry Levine, of course, back with us, former editor of the National Enquirer. Extensive reporting on Maxwell and Epstein, author of The Spider Inside the Criminal Web of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So, Barry, you know, Trump, as you can see there, very agitated, right? He's in a room. He's got some of his economic team around him. CEO of Apple is standing in there, and he is asked about Epstein and loses his cool, calls it a hoax, calls it BS. And the thing about it is, Barry, is that he could just do the most basic thing that would make all of this immediately go away, which would be to release all the files and let people actually read what is in them.
Well, Aaron, they're absolutely, listen, they're in a pickle right now. And, you know, his comments continue to be a betrayal to the victims. I mean, he has never been an advocate for victims. He himself has had numerous allegations of sexual misconduct lodged against him. He's denied each and every one over multiple years. But we're in a situation here where they have to do something. They also have the lawmakers on both sides who have requested the Epstein files to review before they begin questioning these individuals that they put out under subpoena, former President Clinton and so many others. So they have to make a decision in terms of are they going to allow Pam Bondi and her Justice Department to turn over those files. The files should be turned over to the lawmakers, and then we as an American public should see the files, particularly so the victims can attempt to get some closure here. It's just a horrible situation.